Mr. Chairman, we are streaming live on YouTube and recording the meeting. You may begin when you're ready.
Thank you. Welcome to this MetroPlan Orlando TAC meeting. I'd like to call the meeting to order. I'm Chairman Joshua DeVries, and will be chairing the meeting today. Please silence your cell phones, laptops, and other electronic noisemakers. I should probably make sure I did that myself. If you need to take a call, please walk out to the hallway or a cafe area to do so. Just as a reminder, since the meeting and our future meetings will be in person, it's important for all TAC members to attend our meetings in person in order for us to have a quorum. Members of the public will still be available to participate virtually, and we encourage them to do that. Moving on to chairman announcements. There are 2 public comment points in the meeting. Members of the public attending in person who want to speak need to fill out a comment card and give it to Rachel. Those attending virtually who want to speak will use the raise hand feature in the Zoom screen. If attending by phone, you can hit the *9 to raise your hand and request to be recognized. When you're called, your microphone will be temporarily unmuted by staff and will ask you to state your name and contact information for the record. We also accepted comments by email before this meeting. And now I'll turn it over to Slade for agenda review.
All right, thank you, Mr. Chair. Good morning and welcome again to TAC. One quick change on the agenda this morning during comment presentations and status reports. We're going to move item C, the Rethink Your Commute presentation, up to the beginning based on some schedule requests we had from members. But other than that, the agenda will proceed as printed. And then I have some MetroPlan announcements. Wanted to update you all on a few changes here at MetroPlan. Cynthia Lambert, our public information manager, is no longer with MetroPlan Orlando. We're very sad to see her go, but we thank her for her 19 years of service, where she really raised the bar and set the standard for public outreach in the MPO industry, bringing numerous awards alongside her colleagues in the communications team. So we wish her well on the next chapter of her journey. And thankfully, the bench is deep in the communications team. We're proud to promote within. And I'm happy to announce that Marianne Horn has been promoted to Public Information Manager. Marianne brings extensive public relations experience to the role, and we're confident that she will continue the great work that has made a name for our communications team. Thank you and congrats to Marianne. A bit more of MetroPlan Orlando housekeeping. The November 13th board meeting has been canceled, and all October advisory committee business will be heard at the December 11th board meeting. Just an FYI, while all of our committee meetings are recorded and available for viewing on our YouTube channel, you can now find those links in our website calendar. So if you click on today's TAC meeting link on the calendar, there will be also a link to the live stream or the recording. So speaking of events at our office, we'll be hosting our 3rd electric vehicle workshop soon. That one will be on charging infrastructure siting. That'll be on October 28th at 2 p.m. here in person at the MetroPlan Orlando office. And invitations have been emailed out, but we hope that you can join in on the discussion. Please RSVP as soon as possible if you're able to attend, because it is Monday. The 4th and final workshop in this series will be dealing with grant applications and funding opportunities, and that will be on November 12th via Zoom. I also wanted to announce that our safety speaker series is back. Previously, we had a series of distinguished professionals and speakers continue the discussion surrounding safety as part of Vision Zero. And now that we've gotten the regional plan adopted and the local plans are being adopted, we want to make sure we keep the momentum going. So please keep an eye out for those announcements in your inbox coming soon. A couple of regional events that I wanted to key you in on. The American Cancer Society is promoting their road recruitment program right now. This program recruits drivers to provide transportation for cancer patients who don't have a reliable way to get to their treatments, or maybe cannot get home from treatment based on the effects of the treatment. There's a flyer in the general information section of the packet if you want to learn more about that program. And FDOT's Mobility Week begins today. There's lots of transportation related things going on and events, including the Bike 5 Cities event tomorrow. Our outreach team will be at the Castleberry station during Bike 5 Cities, so if you see us, say hey. We're also partners in the Blind Experience, which will be happening on October 30th at the Orlando PD headquarters. More information is available on MetroPlan's website because I believe you required an RSVP for the Blind Experience. But you can also take a look at all of the events on the FDOT Mobility Week website, fdot.gov/project/mobility week. And with that, I'll turn over to Mike for the safety moment. Thanks.
Thank you, Slade, and good morning, everyone. We've gone full circle around a full year, and then we're back to doing October Pedestrian Safety Month again. Very briefly, we want to talk mostly about crosswalks this time, but kind of setting the stage. Reminder of kind of our overall numbers. We have about 78 fatal pedestrian crashes per year if we looked at the 5 years of our Vision Zero study. Good news is that for the first 6 months of this year, we are down 28% for pedestrian fatalities compared to the first 6 of prior years. We wouldn't need to dive a little deeper into that data to get an understanding of why we're doing that. Crashes overall, fatal crashes overall are down as well. As you can also see, serious injury crashes, we have about 160 of those per year. And then looking at crosswalks, about 27% of our fatal and serious involve a pedestrian in a crosswalk, and about 20% of the fatalities. And then when we break those down, of the KSIs, about 45% happen at signalized intersections, and then another 42% are happening at uncontrolled crossings where the motorist is not facing a signal or stop or yield sign. Looking at who failed to yield, it's pretty equal on that. You can see that both motorists and pedestrians share in that, and then there's a number where we just don't have enough information to make that determination. So advice for our drivers out there, key thing when we're at signals, looking right for pedestrians who are coming from the right. If we're preparing to make a right turn on red, we tend to look to the left where all the approaching motor vehicles are coming from. Also, that if you're not facing a signal or a stop sign, you still have to yield to the pedestrian in the crosswalk. And if you are at a signal and you have a green ball or a flashing yellow and you're turning, then you have to yield to those parallel pedestrians. On the pedestrian side, reminder that please push the button. It doesn't automatically give you the walk phase if you don't do that. Although for the planners and engineers, that's a consideration. We should be looking to areas where we've got significant pedestrian activity and maybe consider having an automatic walk phase for them. Also for the pedestrians, communicate with drivers whenever that's feasible. A wave, trying to get their attention. Granted, that could be a challenge with sunglasses, tinted windows, nighttime, but make the effort. And then lastly, scan before you enter the crosswalk and keep scanning as you go across because conditions can change in a moment. We're also going to start giving you a brief update as part of the safety moment, not go in depth in the whole Vision Zero effort, but just give you a snapshot of what we're working on. And want to remind you of the demonstration projects that we've been working on as part of our initial grant. For Orange County, we are kicking off a middle school pilot bicycle program to get kids on bikes learning the skills and strategies. some more higher level skills and strategies that they wouldn't be able to learn when they're in elementary school. With Osceola County, we're looking at a number of locations where we want to have a better understanding of pedestrian and motorist activity, how much, what types of behaviors, and then what kind of countermeasures we can improve at those locations. And then with Seminole County, installing software in their existing signal system so that we can do near miss analysis and get a quicker picture of what's going on before we, waiting for crashes. So that concludes my safety moment for this morning.
All right, thanks, Mike. Turn it over to Rachel for roll call.
We got the agency reports first.
Agency reports, I'm sorry,
Not a problem.
going off my memory script. Need to actually read it.
Thank you, Mike, for this safety moment. Next, we have item 4, agency reports. This is an opportunity for any of our partner agencies to speak to the community or to the committee. If any of our partners wish to provide updates during this slot, please let Rachel and Slade know via email at least a week in advance of the TAC meeting. And today we have Amy Beckman for our regular report out from FDOT.
Good morning. Thank you, Chairman and committee members. It's nice to see everyone again. We had quite a little active hiatus there with both hurricanes, Helene and Milton coming through. So I'm going to take this opportunity to give you a little bit of an update on what FDOT, particularly District 5, has been doing in order to aid in the recovery and the repair post-Milton. So as you're probably aware, some of you may have a difference of opinion based on where you are, but Milton did not, fortunately, bring as much flooding and damage as we thought it was going to do to District 5. It did hit District 1 and 7 a little bit harder. So we had a lot of crews that we had sent out, workers from District 5 to help in other districts for Helene, who we then had to recall with Milton coming in such short order afterwards. So we have addressed certain things such as flooding, washouts, slope erosion, retention pond, and outfall failures. We had the most notable washouts near the area of A1A, our vulnerable coastline, where we are currently working on a project to build buried seawalls. I highly encourage you to look into that project if you're interested in all in that. It's a very interesting and fascinating project, but luckily they serve their purpose. We are putting in more sand to kind of reinforce, and that's ongoing. Additionally, we had a substantial washout of southbound 1792 in Orange City. We've lost both lanes in our southbound side. It was a large washout, but we were able to fully repair that within 5 days and get that road back opened. It's a major thoroughfare for residents of the area, and it was a successful repair. We have, because of the large amount of debris and sand that needs to be picked up, we have been operating all 5 of our operation centers 7 days a week. Some haven't completed their debris cleanup. Others towards the coastline in Volusia have not yet completed. Overall, Seminole County, we did pick up just shy of 500 cubic yards of debris. Osceola was 670-ish cubic yards, with Orange County hitting it around 800 cubic yards for their first pass. Volusia and Flagler are a little higher, with those 2 counties totaling almost 2,000 cubic yards. Volusia is not completed yet, and we're, like I said, around 1,100 cubic yards. So we are working on that. A little bit of update with Osceola and Southern Orange County. D6 did send some workers up to assist us from Miami to help us. We had a washout at I-4 and the State Road 536 bridge, where we experienced a void in the concrete slope panel. It has been repaired. Additionally, there were slope failures at I-4 and World Drive, which are still under repair. We had an outfall failure at the retention pond at State Road 50 and Good Homes Road, which is also under repair, and a void in the pavement at State Road 50 and Misty Oaks Drive. Again, we are in the process of repairing. In Seminole and Northern Orange, the Wekiva Parkway experienced some washouts under the bridge in multiple locations. We are repairing those. We are hoping to have those completed by mid-November. debris collection wrapped up in that area, so we are done there. We had a couple of retention pond issues, as well as we did monitor very closely Lake Harney. Happy to report that it did not overtop during the storm, so that was a nice happy spot in the middle of all of this. Wekiva Section 8 did suffer some ITS outage as well as debris issues. Debris is ongoing, as I said. The ITS system has been restored. We also had an issue with Seaport Manatee, which has a large fuel intake area for our state. We had to reroute some of the fuel tanker trucks around Florida over to Port Canaveral, which, while it's not in Metro Plan's purview, it is within our District 5. Within the Thursday evening through early Monday, so approximately 3.5 days, we were able to see over 1,400 tanker trucks and 12.1 million gallons of fuel come out of Port Canaveral and get into those areas where fuel became a scarce commodity because of evacuations and generator usage. As for going forward, as I said, we are continuing to brief. If you have any questions, please let me know. We are celebrating our Mobility Week. I won't dilly-dally on that at all. Slade already covered that, but I do highly encourage you to go to the website. Once you do so, there are some tabs at the top. You can select District 5 to see any upcoming events near your area. I do have information on lane closures with me. If you are interested in those, please see me afterwards. And one last quick note, when you see us next time at our December meeting rounds, we will start talking to you about our tentative work program. For those of you not familiar, that is kind of our upcoming budget for the next 5 years. That will be coming out. If you have any questions, I'm happy to talk to you afterwards. But I just want to give you kind of a purview that the next meeting, we will have that information present for you. So stay tuned. If you have any questions, I'm happy to answer them. Thank you.
Thank you, Amy. Are there any questions for Amy at all?
Thank you.
Thank you for your report. Now Rachel will call roll.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'll ask committee members to please keep microphones off until called. Barden.
Here.
Henry for Brock.
Here.
Lopez for Carson.
Here.
Cash.
Present.
Casolero.
Present.
Castro. Cologne.
Here.
Cornelison.
Here.
Barrow for Coulon.
Here.
Crandell.
Here.
De Lachey.
Here.
De Vries.
Here.
Ide.
Present.
Elliott Moore. Falk.
Here.
Hamza. Hardwick.
Here.
Hartley.
Here.
Hassan.
Here.
Kamal. Krug. Lim.
Here.
Mendenhall.
Here.
Nelson.
Present.
O'Keefe.
Here.
Brown for Parker.
Here.
Price.
Here.
Holland.
Here.
Ramos.
Here.
Recchi.
Here.
Roll.
Here.
Sanchez.
Here.
Sanders.
Here.
Senerans.
Here.
Smith.
Present.
Story.
Here.
Wharton.
Here.
Martello for Williams. Ye again. Mr. Chairman, that concludes the roll call. We do have a quorum.
Right. Thank you, Rachel. Moving on to item 6, the TAC comment presentations. We have 3 comment presentations, which we will hear now. Please stand your nameplates on end to signal that you wish to ask a question, and we will recognize you at the end. When speaking, please press the red button on the screen to turn on your microphone. As we discussed earlier, we'll start off with Brendan Guess from FDOT to talk about the Rethink Regional Commuter Assistance Program.
Good morning. I am not Brendan Gus. I'm Joe Santiago. I'm the Passenger Operations Supervisor for FDOT District 5, and I'm also the Program Manager for Rethink Your Commute. So today we'll kind of just let you know who we are, what we do, and how we're doing it. So Rethink Your Commute exists because DOT has a TDM policy in place. And that policy lets us know that we should consider TDM strategies in all studies, plans, and programs. So Rethink Your Commute encourages and promotes people moving out of their single occupancy vehicles to other modes of transportation. So we promote things like riding the bus, taking a carpool or a van pool so that we can relieve traffic congestion, improve air quality, and assure energy conservation. And the ways that we do that is we have a mobile app, as everyone else has a mobile app, right? So we match you up according to where you live, where you work, and what your schedule is so that we can see if we can find carpools for you. We work with employers so that we can meet employees where they're at. And hopefully those employers take us in, allow us to present to the employees. And that's how we do our commuter outreach. And we promote incentive for programs for the employees, such as reimbursable rides, so that in case you are taking a carpool or riding the bus or what have you, and you have an emergency and you have to go home, we'll reimburse the ride for you to be able to go home. There's a lot of reasons why employers would want to work with Rethink Your Commute. These are just a few. But working with us is free, right? We're part of the Florida Department of Transportation, so we're not going to charge you for our consulting services. So for that cost of free, we'll help employers find, a contact person or a champion within their organization that will help us, put posters up at the work site and maybe place rack cards at the work site and send email blasts or newsletters and stuff like that. These are just some of the employers that we work with. We work with a lot more employers. These are just the big ones. Again, we do a lot of employer outreach. So we have a big area, right, in the whole 9 counties, and we've divided our area between 3 specialists so that we can determine how we can, who to contact for each company. And we promote, again, things like carpool, van pool, riding the bus, riding the train, walking, biking, and all the modes, right? This past year, we focused a lot on the Employee Transit Bus Pass program. It allows you to take money out of your paycheck before taxes are taken out so that you can pay for things like transit passes and train passes and van pools. We also promote Best Workplaces for Commuters, which is an incentive program for employers. And it's pretty much a public recognition program, and it's a national recognition program so that employers who promote these types of services get some kind of recognition for what they're doing. And these are just some pictures of, events that we've done this past year. Some of these are community events and some of our employer events. We get invited a lot to, health fairs, benefit fairs, and just activities that employers are doing for their employees. We also work a lot with stakeholders. Our stakeholders include all of our transit agency partners in all the 9 counties. We also work with the MPOs and TPOs and also special interest groups like Bike Walk Central Florida and the Bicycling Association. So there's a lot of reasons why we would work with the MPOs and TPOs. We have, some common goals and objectives. So we try to share our data and our metrics, performance indicators, and we try to cross promote as much as possible. So now moving on to what we get for the money. So Rethink Your Commute, again, is a program of the FDOT. So the FDOT funds, what it is that we do. In our rideshare database, we have over 16,000 people in there, and our carpool match rate is about 64%, which is actually pretty decent. In fiscal year 24, we reduced 1.2 or over 1.2 vehicle miles traveled. And we saved our commuters that are logging their trips on our website. We saved them over $837,000. We entered over 1,300 new members in fiscal year 24. And we saved 57,000 gallons of gas. As I've said, we work a lot with employers, so we had 120 stakeholder employer meetings, and we also had 20+ events for commuters. So all those numbers wouldn't be possible if people weren't logging their trips in our database. So in fiscal year 24, we logged 74,011 trips, right? So to note, some of the majority of these trips are from transit riders, which is 28%, and that was followed by carpoolers who were 26%. And I know it looks a little weird here, but we do want people to log the times that they are driving alone, because we have to be realistic about what we're promoting. We're promoting this lifestyle change for people, and we fully understand if you can't, ride the bus 5 days a week or carpool 5 days a week. So we just want to get people utilizing the system and logging their trips. So if you're carpooling 2 times a week, we still want you to log when you drive alone as well that week. So everything that Rethink does, it doesn't happen by accident, right? So we have to plan for all these things. So this led us to developing our first Rethink Your Commute strategic plan. And we wanted to kind of mimic what our transit agencies are doing with transit development plans, and have like a 10-year framework, and have, updates along the way. These are just some of the sections that are available in our strategic plan, and I'm not going to go through all of these. I just want to note that we do look at the current TDM services that are available out there, because we try to promote all of those. We look at the service area profile of the areas that we are serving, and we created our own vision, mission, and goals. And our mission statement kind of summarizes everything that Rethink does. It's to help people make informed decisions on how, when, and where they travel by promoting travel choices, connecting people to local resources, and supporting access to transportation options for all commuters. And to build this plan, we utilized something called Experience Builder, so we can build this dashboard that is actually available to any of our stakeholders. So if you do want access to all this data, just, let us know. We'll kind of hang out in the back and just let us know if you want to receive access to this. Moving on to the promotions that we do. So we do a lot of marketing, so we have to make our marketing look at as attractive as possible, because we're trying to, gain people's confidence and hope that they don't just look away. We want them to have a second look at our marketing items so they can read our poster and hopefully contact us, right? So we try to make it look as attractive as possible, but also have things that we can utilize in other areas, right? So for example, here we have a lady looking out the window, and she's looking at the Space Coast because she's looking at a space shuttle launch. We utilize that same marketing in Lake County by just changing the background. We were able to use it at a billboard in the Claremont Park and Ride, promoting Park and Ride. You can see the lady is looking out the window, and she's watching a seaplane go by, because Lake County is the seaplane capital of the world. We also have done promotional videos, and this is one that we did for Cranes Rides in Altamont Springs, which is their automated vehicle that is still currently in service. And we posted this on our Facebook and our social media. So rethinking for the future, we intend to continue to grow our employer outreach program, continue working with our TPO and MPO partners. And right now, we also have the Ride Rail Stroll Challenge that started on October 2nd, on October 1st and November 2nd. And that is something that we're helping people to challenge themselves and enter their trips into our database and then have a chance to win prizes, so that we can see if we can get them to change their mode. And we also have Mobility Week happening starting today and ends on November 2nd, which you've already heard about. So with that, this is my contact information, as well as Brendan, yes, back here. And if you have any questions, we'll entertain those. Thank you.
Not a question, but a shameless plug. If with Mobility Week, one of the things the city's doing, we did a bingo card, and one of ours is to have staff apply and sign up for Rethink and to do it for the week, and then hopefully they'll continue on. So if you haven't set up a Mobility Week thing for next week, this is an easy one that you could put together in a couple minutes and have your staff do it. But I think it's great. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any questions or comments?
I just wanted to add, since you touched on the art, the promotional art, it's really neat, and our partners at Rethink were nice enough to give us a stack. So if you're looking to spruce up your office or your cubicle, we've got some in the table in the back if you want to grab one.
Any other? Tammy?
So is the app more employer based, or the individuals can do it by themselves without their company being part of the program?
The individuals can do it by themselves without the employer present. We do still like to work with employers though, because it helps. Employees go to work every day and they might not know who's living near them. Maybe they're not in the same department and they just don't know those people, right? So it helps you get, fresh new matches that those people might not have been in the database, but if we work with the employer, we might get more people and more matches.
Exactly. And that was going to be my follow-up question. So the individuals, can they request, like I work for this company, and suggest them to work with you?
Yes,
Okay.
yes.
I've got just a question and then a shameless plug as well. For a question, well, I guess if I just after the meeting or however I'd like to, if I could get your contact information, I just wanted to like to be able to expand the commuter options and that for Osceola County employees, and figure out how we can best work with you on that.
Awesome, yes.
Thanks. And then shameless plug regarding Mobility Week, Osceola County and Best Foot Forward with Pike Walk Central Florida. We're partnering and we're gonna staff a tent at the Boo on Broadway event, which is in downtown Kissimmee. It's a trick-or-treating event, free to the public, and see thousands of kids and parents go through. And we'll be handing out safety information. I believe Best Foot Forward will be doing some helmet fittings, and then also information on transportation projects. So that's actually this evening starting, I think it's 5:30 to 7:30, I believe. So if you're going to be in downtown Kissimmee and you have kids, it's definitely a great event. So that's all I had. Yep.
Hi, I just wanted to add a personal endorsement for Rethink and how it's impacted me. I haven't had a car for the last year, and I have been using the Rethink app since before I gave up my car. But what it's really allowed me to, and what really shines for me, is the guaranteed ride home. So in those instances where I have a late meeting or a public meeting at another location, or a tropical storm rolls in and I can't ride my bike home, it's so easy to submit a reimbursement request through the app, and I get reimbursed for the exact ride of my Uber, Lyft, or even if one of my friends drove me home, they could get reimbursed for that gas. So that is a really easy to use and probably one of the biggest difference makers for the Rethink program for me.
Thank you.
Anyone else? All right. Seeing none, thank you, Joe. I appreciate
Thank you very much.
the very informative presentation. So next we have Taylor Laurent with Metro Plan Orlando with an update on the 2050 MTP.
Thank you, Rachel. And thank you for your time this morning. I'm happy to be able to present an update on our 2050 Metropolitan Transportation Plan, where it stands and what's coming next. So to start with, I'd like to highlight our recent public engagement efforts. That's something we've been fairly quiet about, but it's time to bring that one to the forefront. We've had 3 meetings, in-person outreach events since our last TAC meeting with the Eatonville Chamber of Commerce, UCF Urban Knights, as well as the City of Orlando Mayor's Committee on Healthy Aging and Livability. Between just those 3 events, we've had more than about 60 in-person interactions and more than 46 surveys completed for public feedback to incorporate within our plan. These are summarized in your agenda packets under general information with the MTP status update. You'll see public engagement reports that summarize the feedback that we've received, who participated in that event, and other details, so you can see the same feedback that we are and potentially incorporate that into your planning processes as well if it's relevant. You will continue to see those public engagement reports in your agenda packets moving forward as a standard element of the 2050 MTP status update. In terms of our technical work, the Central Florida Regional Planning Model team we're still coordinating with them on a regular basis. Right now, performing a secondary review of the socioeconomic data for the regional traffic model. It's looking much better this go around, so we're excited about that. But I wanted to give you all a little bit of notice that when we do receive the 2050 horizon year forecasted socioeconomic data, we will be sharing that with you to get your feedback on that as well. In terms of our congestion management process, we are at the point where we're developing draft targets for what we would work towards through 2050. So that document is being developed and ideally drafted and completed by the end of this year. Everyone should have also received some emails about the draft regional freight network that is currently being reviewed under its draft format, hopefully by all of you, but all of our technical workshop attendees as well, to be able to get some feedback on what that draft regional freight network is and make sure that everything's lined up and designated accordingly. Shout out to Castleberry. Thank you for already submitting your feedback on that about 2 hours after the technical workshop last week. So it's pretty the record so far. A lot of our other technical reports are reaching that final recommendations, strategies, refinement stage. So that includes our health, housing, environmental stewardship, resilience, and financial resources estimations. So you will be seeing those concluded as well by the end of this year. In terms of our needs assessment, we have completed all of our modal analyses from all those individual unique perspectives. So that is a big win for the development of the MTP. And we've been working with each of you and your staffs to be able to kind of craft and refine those lists as we've completed them. So we've done that for the state highway system, the off system, so everything else, but still eligible for Metro Plan Orlando funds. And now we're going to come through to meet with each of your local agencies one last time for basically a track changes discussion. Let's make sure that all of the feedback you provided has been incorporated. Any areas where there's potentially consolidation efforts, let's talk through those to make sure that we're refining that project needs list so it reflects the transportation projects we would like to see implemented through 2050. So vast majority of agencies have already proactively scheduled that coordination meeting. If you're not sure if you have one or you'd like to get one scheduled, please reach out to me as soon as possible so we can get that on the calendar. The final review, so the final draft needs list will be distributed next week with feedback due on that on November 15th. And I mentioned our technical workshop. Thank you to those who were able to attend last week. I know there was a lot still going on with Hurricane Milton cleanup. So if you were unable to attend and were still interested in the information, we will have the recording of that meeting published on our YouTube channel very soon. But for a quick recap, that video will provide additional information about how we developed that regional freight needs draft network that you have open for your review right now. The integration of how health is being incorporated in transportation planning, how we're looking at housing and transportation and incorporating that into our long-range plan, as well as an update on our financial resources estimations, as well as an overview of the prioritization process and that draft methodology. So knowing that the prioritization is a key element, one of those critical path items for the MTP, I'll give you a bit of a preview of or a recap of what happened at the technical workshop last week, but a bit of a preview of what those of you who are participating in this afternoon sessions will see as well. So for project prioritization, we're going to take a little bit of a step back. Our needs assessment is the process where we're identifying all of the transportation projects that we'd like to see completed through 2050 under ideal situations. That doesn't tell us which one comes first. So that's where our project prioritization process comes in to help us order those projects and make sure that the ones that are funded first are those that are addressing our regional transportation goals and objectives that we developed collaboratively through the MTP process earlier this year. So as we talk about the prioritization process itself, you're going to hear three terms from me a lot today, as well as from Adriana this afternoon. And those are really the goal area weighting, which is how we organize and center our prioritization process around our goals and objectives for the long range plan. You'll hear about evaluation criteria, so how we measure each of those goals, and then the criteria scoring, which is how we determine a high need versus a low need. So how do we evaluate each of those criteria? So as we look to develop the 2050 prioritization process, it's going to be very similar to what we did in the 2045 plan, maintaining the same overall structure, 5 goal areas, but ideally simplifying things down a little bit in terms of evaluation criteria, and also making sure that those evaluation criteria are catered and centered around the types of projects that we will be prioritizing. And more to come on that this afternoon. In terms of the goal area weighting, thank you to those who participated in our survey to be able to assist with developing that first draft weighting scenario. So the survey that was distributed was set up very qualitatively. It asked, is goal area 1 more important than goal area 2? And you went through the full series of combinations of all of these 5 goal areas to result in the goal area weighting that you see on the slide here. So safety came in at 35% of the overall priority points, followed by connectivity with 25%, reliability with 20%, and then community and prosperity with 10% each. So overall, that adds up to a total possible priority score of 100 points once we go through to start implementing this later on. So that's how we came up with the goal area weighting. So that's step 1. We're in a really good spot there. Step 2 is selecting those evaluation criteria to make sure that we're able to measure effectively each of these goal areas and bringing in the right information to do so. So for those participating this afternoon, you'll be able to see the full draft of those evaluation criteria. This was also included in the agenda packets for the technical workshop last week. So if you have any questions about those, please let me know. And then the third step, which will also be part of this afternoon's discussion, is defining those criteria scoring elements. So as we look at one of those evaluation criteria, such as safety, let's say we're looking at the high injury network. That's our evaluation criteria. How do we know if it's high or low? Is it just on the regional high injury network plan from our Vision Zero work? Or is it on the county high injury network and the local high injury network? Should there be ranges to those scoring thresholds to be able to account for that fluctuation? So we've gone through and created draft score thresholds based on each individual data set, so it's statistically relevant when you look at those in their draft form this afternoon for our discussion. So going into step 4, this is once we figure out and refine all of steps 1 through 3, this is where the entire process is then applied to each of the 9 modal programs that we're suggesting this go around. So this is very similar to what we did in the 2045 plan, just with more specificity in terms of those modal programs. For example, you'll see a new one for safety and Vision Zero projects specifically. So there is a lot more to come in terms of prioritization, and thank you to those who will be able to join our discussion this afternoon, starting at 1:15. But this prioritization methodology development really signals the start of the next stage and element of our 2050 MTP, and that is the infrastructure investment decision-making process. But overall, we are going to be getting more into that in 2025. And we are still on track to be able to adopt our 2050 plan by December of next year, so 2025. So thank you for your time this morning. Does anyone have any questions?
Are there any questions?
Yes, I don't have a question, Mr. Chairman. Thank you so much, Taylor, for the presentation. I have a question regarding the safe routes to school. Because in Orange County, we're building schools every year, 2 or 3, because of the new development and so on and so forth. So how does this program work on the future schools? I know that just from a baseline, it's based on the existing schools that we have and the connectivity, transportation network. But what about for the future and the progression? Do we take into account that, or do we revise the plan every so often to account for that particular element of the plan?
So the way our Safe Routes to School funding allocation works at the moment is we have in our 2045 plan a subset of sidewalk projects that have been identified for funding through our process to be able to help advance those where they were not able to receive funding through any other means. So that's how it's been functioning to date. As we look through to the 2050 plan, I'm not anticipating that program funding discussion, those definitions to change too much. But we can talk through about which of the projects that have been identified specifically for Orange County, which ones might be eligible for that. So that can be part of our discussion. We do have our 2050 final draft coordination meeting scheduled, so let's make sure that we talk about it then as well, so we can get into specifics.
Any other questions? All right, I just wanted a clarification and make sure everyone's understanding for the workshop. You said that, so after TAC, we'll be taking a break and then coming back at 1:15 then, is that the plan?
Yes, for those who are able to stay and attend in person, the prioritization working session starts at 1:15 this afternoon. We have received a handful of requests for virtual attendance options. So those Zoom panelist links have been distributed to those who requested them in advance. But if you do have any questions, if you're not able to stay or participate through either of those forms, please find myself or Adriana Rodriguez so we can talk through what your options are to still be able to provide feedback through this process.
Okay. And the in-person, will that be in the boardroom then?
Yes,
Okay.
we'll return here at 1:15.
All right.
I have cookies for you.
Lunch. All right, before we move on, are there any final questions for Taylor on this item? All right, hearing none, thank you, Taylor, appreciate it. All right, and then the last common presentation that we have, Laura Balk with Metro Plan Orlando for the status update on the regional signal traffic signal retiming program.
All right, good morning, everyone. Good to see all of you. For those who are here for TSMO, this will look very familiar, hopefully be equally as enthralling. So I'm going to present the findings from our evaluation for our fiscal year 22-23 signal retiming program. So for those who are involved, this is not the segments that were retimed last year, the year before that. So going in the Wayback Machine a little bit. We do this evaluation annually on the program. We look at a number of performance metrics along the retimed corridors before and after the retiming, do a benefit cost analysis, and generally evaluate the value of the program. So we've been funding signal retiming here in the region for 15 plus years now because there are a number of benefits that we can get through the retiming, improving traffic flow, reducing delay at our intersections. There's opportunity for managing speeds through signal retiming and making things safer and more comfortable for our bicyclists and pedestrians. So for the fiscal year 22-23 program, we retimed 24 corridors in one individual intersection. These next few slides show generally the locations of those retimed corridors. So in Orange County, we retimed 17 corridors. In Seminole County, we retimed 4 corridors in that one individual intersection. And then in Osceola, we retimed 3 corridors. Looking at the data that we use for these evaluations, when we first started this program back in 2009, we were doing floating car runs to look at the travel time differences before and after the retiming. And then in 2011, and for the next approximately 10 years, we started using Bluetooth data In Seminole County, they have a number of permanent Bluetooth stations that we would use if those corridors were being retimed. For all the others, we would put out temporary Bluetooth counters. And then when the pandemic hit in 2020, we had to pivot. And we looked at all of our options and ended up using connected vehicle data. We used WeJo data for the first few years. And then when they stopped doing business last year, we had to pivot. And we ended up going with TomTom data. Since this was a new data source for us, we did do a data validation exercise. And we looked at the data coming out of TomTom and compared it to both the permanent Seminole County stations that I mentioned before, as well as to some of the areas where we had WeJo data from previous evaluations. The overall results are here, but generally we found that the data was within an acceptable margin of error for us to use it. So we did. We look at a number of performance metrics, and actually using the connected vehicle data allowed us to add a few additional ones, look at travel time, reliability, how much we can reduce our emissions and fuel consumption, and then impacts to intersection and pedestrian delay. And what we found for that fiscal year 22-23 slate of corridors was that on 88% of the corridors that we retimed, they had shorter travel times following the retiming. Generally, the reliability before and after the retiming was about the same, with about 80% of corridors showing reliable travel times. We were able to significantly reduce our emissions and fuel consumption on those corridors. For that one individual intersection, we did reduce the intersection delay there. That's a win. And then looking at all of the intersections for all the retimed corridors, we saw that on about 17% of those, the pedestrian delay was reduced. So we saw some multimodal benefits as well. Looking at the benefit cost summary, when we annualized those travel time reductions, came out to about 280,000 hours saved. And then a present value for a three-year cost for all of that time savings, using that travel time cost savings at the bottom of the slide, came to about $18.1 million in savings. And our total cost for the program that year was $1.1 million, which led to a BC ratio of 16.4. This slide shows how our BC ratio has sort of fluctuated over time. As you just heard, we base this benefit cost ratio on the travel time savings. So it's generally dependent on which corridors we're choosing and how much travel time savings we're seeing. You can see last year there was actually a negative BC ratio, but we had some pretty good travel time saving benefits this year. So we're back in the black. And thinking about moving forward, signal retiming is sort of a balancing of competing priorities. So where we're saving travel time for our vehicles, sometimes that can have negative impacts on our pedestrians and bicyclists in terms of their delay. Our retiming consultants and our maintaining agency staff, they do work to reduce that, but it's something that we have to take into account. And moving forward, one of the actions that's in our Regional Vision Zero action plan is to look at how we can use signal retiming to manage speed. So that's something you'll be hearing more about in the coming months. A couple of additional analyses that we did under this task order I'm going to talk about now. One of those was looking at the impact to travel speed along those corridors that were retimed, and this is real high level analysis that we did. But first we looked at the average speeds along the entirety of the corridors that were retimed, broke those into segments, and were able with the CV data to look at the speeds at each segment and then average those out. And essentially saw for this data set, it's a small one, it's just the corridors that were retimed for this year. We didn't see any significant change really. For the entirety of the corridor, there was an increase of 1 mile an hour for the average speed and about a decrease of 0.2 miles per hour for that 85th percentile speed. So we also looked at it just near the intersections and those intersection influence areas around 250 feet around each intersection, and basically saw the same thing, about a 1 mile per hour increase in both the average and 85th percentile speeds. Another thing that we looked at this year was distracted driving. I know at the regional level, distracted driving was among those factors that we saw for crashes in the area. I'm sure all of you probably talked about this at your various progress working group meetings. And so what we did was we chose 5 intersections that were along retimed corridors for this analysis year, tried to distribute those throughout the region, at least one in each county, different types of contacts in terms of land use around them. A few were near schools. And we sent out a team that looked at Tuesday through Thursday for 1 week in September. And they were looking during AM and peak period at the first 5 vehicles for those peak periods to see where they saw distracted driving behaviors and what the impact of the distracted driving was on the headways. So what we found was that about 51% of the drivers that they observed were displaying distracted driving behaviors, a variety of behaviors, a lot of people on their phone, some folks eating or talking to others in the vehicle, other distractions. And that about 60% of those distracted driving behaviors did persist into the green phase. We did not see any significant correlation between the distracted driving and the headways for this analysis. That said, it was only 5 intersections. This is something that we've got a lot of interest in at our board meetings. Like I said, it comes up as one of the crash factors that we saw for our crashes in the region. So we expect to do a bit more work in this area. We did do sort of a high level look at crashes near these intersections and just looked at the crash data for that same analysis period we used for the Vision Zero analyses 2018 to 2022. And of the 637 crashes in these intersection areas, about 16% were due to distracted driving crashes. Now that may be an undercount because we only counted those where the crash report form and the reporting officer actually noted distracted driving. They don't always see it, but significant enough that we will be doing further analysis, I think, in this area. So stay tuned for more on that. So there will be a summary of this distracted driving analysis, the speed analysis, and then the overall reporting out on the signal retiming program up on our website after we finish talking to all of the committees. And there are a couple of summary infographics in your informational items today. And that's all I have for you, but I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you.
My question is more of a request. The
Okay.
State Road 434 in Ronald Reagan, that's the middle of our city. And I was curious if I can get the detailed data for that or, yeah, that'd be good.
Yeah.
Also, did you look at, because that intersection is awful, especially if the train comes. So, I mean, you could be sitting there 5 minutes waiting. So is it possible the data shows, or could you see the difference in those people that stayed on their phone after they've been sitting there for 5 minutes and then they just stayed on their phone? Because, that was one of the things looked at, which I thought was a good metric because Florida's one of the unique states
Right.
where if you're stopped, you're allowed to be on your phone.
Exactly.
So I was kind of curious on if there's a longer delay, does that lead to more people being on their phone while they take off? Or if there's a short delay, like you're only stopped for 30 seconds, is that less? That's kind of why I was curious.
Well, let's follow up on that after. We could definitely dive deeper into the data and then we'll get you some of
Okay,
those answers.
cool.
Absolutely.
Very good. Thank you. Thank you. Great presentation. By the way.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
No,
Hi there.
I was gonna
I know,
have
I knew you was gonna.
questions. First off, I'm very grateful and excited to see how the safety action plan is infiltrating into all of these initiatives. I remember in 2020 asking for some of this stuff in our retiming plan, and you came back to give it to me. So I'm very grateful for that.
Try to be respectful.
Remind me if the retiming is just looking at peak hours.
The retime, no.
Okay.
No, it's all.
So then I wanted to share some info that my colleague Megan and I got when we were at a federal highways training in Denver this summer. So Denver has been implementing, they've been trying to attack their stale greens, which is when we have green and there's no platoon going through these longer signal cycles. And they were seeing that those cycles were having more red light running, especially after peak hours. You're sitting at a red light for 3 minutes, someone's going to take the initiative and go through. So they decreased their cycles from 120 seconds to 90 seconds. And that resulted in a third more crossings for pedestrian crossing opportunities by going to those shorter cycles. And that increased pedestrian compliance with the walk sign during peak hours, about 25%. But outside of peak hours, almost 50%. So going back to Mike's safety moment on our crosswalk crashes, encouraging people to cross when they have that signal. And then the last thing I wanted to share, I already did on the longer cycle compliance. So I think that's it's just really great to see how it's incorporating the safety action plan and looking at all of these things. So thank you.
Thank you. Will you send me those bullet points via email?
I will.
Thank you.
And those are things we're looking at for our cross project with the city, which so we hopefully will have some examples in Central Florida of these same wins.
Excellent. Thank you.
Thanks. Anyone else? All right. Seeing none. Thank you, Laura. All right. We will now hear public comments on the action items. We ask that you provide your name and address for the record, and please hold your comments to 2 minutes or less. If any members of the public wish to comment and are joining us virtually, please use the raise hand function and you will be recognized, or dial *9 on your phone keypad. We'll send you a prompt to unmute your mic. Do we have anyone joining us virtually who would like to make a comment?
Mr. Chair, we don't have any hands raised on the virtual side.
It's probably no. Okay, all right. Do we have any members of the public attending in person that wish to make a public comment?
Mr. Chairman, we've received no comments.
Yeah. And lastly, are there any written comments that were submitted before the meeting?
No comments received on action items.
All right, thank you. I'm moving on to item 7, action items. Today's action items include recommendations for the TIP and PPL. Those documents are listed in your agenda packets.
That's leftover from an earlier.
Oh, yeah,
My
yeah.
bad.
All right. All right. So apologize. All right. Our first item is approval of the August 23rd, 2024 TAC meeting minutes, which are at tab 1 on your agenda packet.
I move to approve. Shad Smith.
Right. We have a motion
Centerman.
and a second. Is there any discussion? All right. Hearing none. This is a voice vote. All in favor, state by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, like sign? All right. Motion passes unanimously. Our next action item is an amendment to the Transportation Improvement Program. More information can be found on tab 2 of your agenda packet, and Jason Sartorio of Metro Plan Orlando will tell us more about that.
Good morning, Chairman and committee members. This morning I have 2 TIP amendments for you, and additional information on those amendments is located in tab 2 of your agendas. The first amendment will add ACSS funds and local funds in fiscal year 2025 for construction of the Buenaventura Boulevard Complete Streets project from Florida Parkway to East Osceola Parkway. The next amendment request is from GOA to add a new consolidated rental car facility and associated roadway improvements. This amendment will include financing from a federal TIFIA loan. And this is a bit of a unique request because in order to secure the loan, the project must be included in the TIP first, whereas typically projects are not added into the TIP until funding has been awarded. We are including the project into the TIP proactively with caveats for purposes of planning consistency. With that being said, unless there are any questions, we are asking for your recommendation of approval. Thank you.
Move to recommend approval. Hartley.
All right, I have a motion.
Second, Shad Smith.
And I have a second. Is there any discussion? Seeing none. This is a voice vote. All in favor, state by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, like sign? Motion passes unanimously. Thank you. And moving on to the next item, which is the Metro Plan Orlando Title VI and LEP plan. Marianne Horn from Metro Plan Orlando can tell us more about that.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, committee members. Good to see you today. I'm here to talk to you about something that I think you know quite a bit about, both from your interactions with us and in your individual jurisdictions. However, I want to tell you a few things about our most recent update to our non-discrimination and language plans. And you have in your packets a link to the draft document, which is on our website now, and also a look at our board action fact sheet explaining some of the rationale of why and how we do this each time. I'll start with some updated figures that we have since the last time I talked to you about this and about some of our underserved populations in Central Florida. There are a number of reasons that people have challenges and barriers to accessing information about our planning process. These are just a few. Economic, whether or not they possess a vehicle, physical disabilities, and age, either young or old, that these can keep people from being able to fully participate in the planning process. But our goal, of course, is to open this process to everyone in Central Florida to the extent possible. We do have a legacy of non-discrimination. You have heard from us before on this numerous times. There are two parts to this. Title VI of the Civil Rights Act of 1964, which prohibits discrimination by programs that receive any type of federal financial assistance. Also, the limited English proficiency, that's what LEP stands for. This provides guidance on engaging people who speak English less than very well. And less than very well are the exact words that the census uses. These are, people say this about their own abilities. And so that's how we know that that is a concern that we need to address. So Title VI tells us not to discriminate, and we strive every day to comply with those federal and state non-discrimination requirements. We do want to go further than that, however. That's just the baseline for us. And our policy here, what you will read in the document that draft document that we've provided, is how we plan to serve the communities without discrimination, to bring more people into the process, and to listen to what people tell us are their challenges and barriers in accessing our information. Likewise, with the limited English proficiency plan, we do want to engage people regardless of what their most comfortable language is. We want them to be able to participate in the process. And this can be in terms of written material. We are doing more and more translation into different languages in our written pieces. We have today, and I would ask you to pick up on your way out if you haven't seen it yet, our 2050 MTP brochure, hot off the press. It was held up by Hurricane Milton. It's here now. We took it out into the community for the first time. The version here is in English, but I want you to know that we have substantial quantities of the same piece in Spanish and in Haitian Creole. And if this is something that you would like to have, or if there is a community that you would like to see us take those to, please reach out, talk to Slade or talk to me. And we do have those now where we can put that in their hands. We also can provide help with interpretation of languages. Our website provides some tools. We have some other ways. These are detailed in the draft plan. And so this is an ongoing process for us, is to not let language be any more of a barrier than it has to be as we involve people in the process. Another part of the non-discrimination plan discusses what we call transportation underserved communities. These are places where people are likely to face challenges to accessing what we want to give them, a safe, reliable, convenient, and affordable transportation. We use two tools to look for this, the Equitable Transportation Communities Explorer tool, as well as the U.S. Department of Transportation's Climate and Economic Justice Screening tool, known as CJEST. I want to make sure that you note that these are not the only places where people experience, disadvantages in our region. However, these are the communities where the tools that we use tell us there's a likelihood that people living there will have some barriers. This is a quick overview of one of our maps. We have some more map information in the written plan. And it shows you quickly a little bit about how many people and how much of our region is impacted. There is a footnote at the bottom, very tiny type. I'll summarize it for you. It's also in the plan. That large Southeast Osceola County census tract is all green. Green is what indicates the likelihood of an underserved community. it is an outlier because that's largely ranch and agriculture and preservation lands. Some of the characteristics of that will change in coming years, we're quite sure. But for now, it all would qualify as being underserved. However, because of the characteristics there being unusual, it was not used in calculating our, percentages and so forth. There are people who live there. They do experience extreme challenges to transportation, but it's not really, it would skew the data to such an extent that it would not be responsible to include that. But we want to note it, and we know that it's in our area. So with that, I'm happy to take any questions, and if you have questions afterwards, of course, you can always reach out to me. I would observe, as I have for the other committees, that when last I was before you talking about Title VI and equity, we had mentioned our transportation for all plan. And that is not a part of what we're talking about today. We're talking about today, the updates of our, federally mandated programs. We will be coming back to talk to you more about that overall transportation for all effort, which is moving into becoming a part of our 2050 plan. So stay tuned for that.
All right, thank you. Before we take a vote, so we have a question.
Just a quick question. Is there, I didn't see it in the plan, or maybe you have resources available. City just went through and put our Title VI, non-discrimination, and our LEP together, but one of the issues we're finding is finding services to provide those languages. We're using staff that for certain languages, but I just didn't know if there's any resources out there that you could provide to help some of the cities or the smaller regions to have those services.
There are resources I can point you toward. It's probably best if we have that discussion outside of here, but yeah, there are some things that you can do, and I'd be happy to help.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Any other questions? All right, see none. Do we have a motion to recommend the Title VI and LEP plan approval?
Shad Smith, I move to approve.
Second, Castellaro.
All right, we have a motion and a second. This is a voice vote. All in favor, state by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, like sign? All right, motion passes unanimously. Thank you. All right. Our next action item is the 2025 Metro Plan Orlando Committee meeting schedule. Slade Downs can tell us more about that.
All right, I'll keep this quick. Up on the screen and in the full agenda packets, you'll find a copy of the proposed 2025 committee meeting calendar. For the purposes of TAC, we will continue to meet twice per quarter on the fourth Friday of the month, with a few exceptions for holidays, which are shaded in gray up there on the calendar. And TAC and TISMO are shaded in red, and the MTP workshops are in purple, and the board meetings are in blue. Of course, you're welcome to join for any of the meetings, but it seems like the most relevant to this group. I'd like you to just take a second, if you're aware of any conflicts with any of your cities or counties, calendars that conflict with any of these dates, please let us know. If you don't have the next year of your calendar memorized, that's fine. Shoot me an email and let me know. But with that, I wanted to just check in, see if anyone knew of any conflicts.
Okay, before we make a vote or anything, I just wanted to give an opportunity if there's any concerns or questions. All right, seeing none. Do you have a motion to recommend adoption of the 2025 Metro Plan Orlando committee meeting schedule?
Second, Sanders.
All right, we have a motion and a second. This is a voice vote. All in favor, state by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, like sign? All right, motion passes unanimously. Thank you. And our last action item is the appointment of the Officer Selection Subcommittee. Slade Downs can tell us more about that.
Right, thank you. It's that time of year again at TAC. We're forming a subcommittee to select the 2025 TAC leadership. We need at least 3 subcommittee members nominated, 1 from each county. Please keep in mind that the members can be from cities or towns within the counties, don't have to represent seats held by the county governments themselves. The subcommittee will meet for about a half hour virtually to determine leadership nominations, which we'll bring back at our next TAC meeting. Mr. Chair, if you'd like to open the floor for nominations to the subcommittee. Thank you.
Go ahead and open the floor. Christina. All right, great. So we've got one for Osceola, for Seminole or Orange.
Chair, we're not being pointed at by colleague down the row.
Is it an in-person meeting or a
Virtual.
Yeah, I can volunteer, so if you want. Nobody else did, unless Bill raised his hand there.
All right.
I'll do it, that's fine.
Okay. All right. So,
Since Lenny's doing the other one, I'll do this one.
all right, so just make sure that we've got the recommendations. Good. We've got Christina right now on the guess what we'll be voting on for Osceola, and then Brian Sanders for Orange and Shad Smith for Seminole. Are there any other nominations that we would like to make? All right. So looks like we now have 3 nominations for the subcommittee. Do I have a motion to appoint Christina Cologne, Brian Sanders, and Shad Smith to the subcommittee?
Hardwick, motion.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, this is a voice vote. All in favor, state by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed, like sign? All right, that motion passes unanimously as well. Thank you, everyone. So next on the agenda, we've TAC presentations. There are no TAC presentations today. And then general information. There are several items under the general information in tab 4 in your agenda packets. Please review these when possible. And then our next TAC meeting will be held in person on Friday, December 6th. The next Metro Plan Orlando Board meeting will be held in person on Wednesday, December 11th. And a full list of upcoming meetings is in your agenda packets. And then we've got member comments and other business. At this time, do any committee members want to make any final comments?
Good morning, everyone. I'm sure we talked briefly about this a couple months ago, and I wanted to get some committee members' thoughts and opinions. It's regarding e-bikes and e-scooters. City of Winter Park has seen some challenges with those devices, and we understand that under Florida statute, they're kind of categorized as a typical bike as long as they're meeting the classification for those classes as identified in the statute. We ran into an issue where we had an e-scooter accident with a pedestrian who was jogging on a trail. And we also understand that under the Florida statute, the jurisdiction has the capability to make some restrictions and not allow the electrical bicycles and electrical scooters to go on certain trails or sidewalks. However, we have 2 challenges with that. One, the enforcement side. While I think it would be kind of cool to see some police officers on e-scooters to kind of monitor that, I don't think my police chief would allow that. And the other side is if we have a trail that goes into multi-jurisdictions, if we say that if we're not going to allow, say, e-scooters and e-bikes on a certain trail that connects to another jurisdictional trail network, Does that mean that they get off their e-scooters and walk to the other side of the trail? Those are some of the challenges that we are kind of seeing, and I wanted to see if any members had the same experience or had a resolution to this matter. I know MetroPlan Orlando staff have been kind of taking a stab at this as well at a legislature level, but just wanted to get some thoughts. Thank you.
Yes, we've, in the city of Orlando, we've been dealing with this for several years now. And I appreciate you considering that our trails go in and out of each other's jurisdictions. You kind of answered your own question. If you do not have officers to sort of enforce on scooters, you're in that catch-22 of they wouldn't be able to enforce the signage on the trail either. So our approach has been over the past couple of years is kind of what we would do with traffic calming as well. We haven't moved towards actual recommended speed signs for our trails, but it all comes down to mass and velocity when we're talking about safety. So we want to encourage that probably like 8 to 15 miles per hour on our trails would be a safe speed. So we've had some conversations. I think Kittleson on their website, they have some recommendations for trail speeds and what we can do with that. It's horizontal deflection is probably preferred, as well as separating, offering space that's specifically demarcated for this is where pedestrians can be, and this is where you might see people going faster with 2 wheels, 1 wheel, whatever new device were to come up. But I think luckily Daphne, our micromobility manager, is here for Jacques Collin too. So if you wanted to add anything.
I didn't have anything to add at this moment. That's actually something for me to learn. So that's great information. I think that's something for me to look into a little bit more for our trails also, since we're wanting to develop more trails in our downtown areas. But
And when we did first start having these issues, we did ask our bicycle patrol from our police department to do some just presence and outreach on the trails as well.
Just to piggyback off what you're saying, Laura, I do think I'm on the Seminole Wekiva Trail almost every day, and those e-scooters and bikes are flying. Even if we could slow them down, you're going to get the traditional bicyclists that those road bikes that are on those trails, they can be going almost 30 miles an hour. And how do we then enforce that? So it's, we should, I think the e-scooters and e-bikes are a lot heavier. So there's more damage that could happen when you're going at that speed as opposed to a road bike, which they're pretty light. But I think it's just across all of the trails and our networks that we're putting in, we're gonna have to figure out something as a group to try to enforce, because it'll be way too difficult to say, oh, well, you're in Altamont, so you can't ride the e-scooter up. Now you got into Winter Park, so you can, but only on this trail, not this trail. It's like we have to almost come with a common rule that we all want to follow. I think it would make it a lot easier.
I was going to say, I think that would be great, because I think private or people are going to be wanting to buy more e-scooters, e-bikes on a personal side, not just renting the ones that we offer in our jurisdiction. So coming up with something that can be followed like as a standard that people will understand, they know, and will follow, I think that'd be great.
Yeah, there was one, I don't know if anyone saw it or heard it, but there was a pretty bad crash with a regular bicyclist into one of the handrails right by Westmont on the trail yesterday. It sounded like a car crash. He hit so hard, but the person was under the influence, so there's other factors, but even that was a regular bike and it was pretty bad.
At Osceola, we're at the early stages and we have similar concerns. So we've begun research into this and looking at coming up with a policy or ordinance on that. So as we get further along the process, definitely feel free to reach out and we share what information we get.
Thank you.
Yep. Any other announcements or comments by any board members? All right. Seeing no further comments, we'll move on to public comments. So if any members of the public wish to comment and are joining us virtually, please use the raise hand function and you will be recognized, or dial *9 on your phone keypad. We'll send you a prompt to unmute your mic. After you're recognized, please state your name and address for the record and limit your comments to 2 minutes or less. Do we have anyone joining us virtually who would like to make a comment?
Mr. Chairman, there are no hands raised online and no comments received from the room.
All right. And are there any written comments that were submitted before the meeting?
No written comments received.
All right. So there's no further business. We will stand adjourned at 11:29. Thank you.